They said an Omega couldn't survive 3 days in the Forsaken Lands. But when Alara dragged herself from the wilderness 6 months later, silver-eyed and terrifying, wearing a crown of moonlight and vengeance, Demon realized he hadn't just banished his mate. He'd awakened something the world had forgotten to fear. The reckoning begins. The first sign that Demon had monumentally screwed up came exactly 48 hours after Alara's banishment, when his head warrior, the indomitable Jackson, a man who'd once fought off 12 rogues while nursing a hangover, collapsed during morning drills like a puppet with cut strings. "Get up, Jackson," Demon barked, irritation masking the unease creeping up his spine. "We don't have time for dramatics." Jackson didn't move. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. And when the pack healer pressed her fingers to his pulse, her face went chalk white. "His wolf is gone," she whispered. "I can't feel it. It's like it's been erased." "That's impossible," Demon said, but his voice lacked conviction. Deep in his chest, where the mate bond had once thrived like a living flame, there was nothing but a cold, aching void that seemed to be spreading. He'd felt it since the moment he'd uttered those damning words under the blood moon. But he'd convinced himself it was temporary. Breakup pains. Phantom limb syndrome for assholes. Riker appeared at his elbow, because Riker always appeared when things went sideways, like a particularly judgmental guardian angel. "We need to talk." "Not now." "Yes, now." Riker grabbed his arm, a bold move that would have gotten anyone else exiled, and dragged him toward the strategy room. 3 more warriors are showing symptoms. The crops in the southern fields withered overnight. And the Moon Temple? The priestess says the altar stone is cracking. So unless you think these are all fantastic coincidences happening right after you banish your pregnant mate to certain death, we need to talk. Now, the strategy room was already occupied. Elder Thorn stood by the window, his ancient face carved with more wrinkles than Sharpay, and infinitely more judgment. Lady Morgana lounged in one of the leather chairs, examining her perfectly manicured nails like she hadn't just orchestrated the destruction of Demon's life. And High Priestess Kaya, keeper of the Moon Temple and the only person in the pack who genuinely terrified Demon, stood by the fireplace, her silver eyes reflecting flames that seemed too bright, too knowing. "Alpha King," Kaya said, and somehow made his title sound like an insult. "How lovely of you to join us in addressing the apocalypse you've triggered." "I did what was necessary for the pack's strength," Demon said, defaulting to the script Morgana had fed him, even though the words tasted like ash now. "Oh, did you?" Kaya's laugh was sharp enough to draw blood. "Tell me, oh wise king, does a pack grow stronger when its warriors lose their wolves? When its lands turn barren? When the moon goddess herself withdraws her blessing because her laws have been violated?" She stepped closer, and the temperature dropped. "You didn't just reject any mate, Demon. You rejected your true mate, your fated bond. And you did it while she carried your heir, a child who bears both your bloodline and hers." "Hers?" Demon frowned. "She's an Omega. There's nothing special about her bloodline." Elder Thorn made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a death rattle. "Shows what you know, boy. That Omega descends from the first wolves, the original pack blessed directly by the moon goddess herself. Her bloodline has been dormant for generations, hidden among the lower ranks, because power that pure attracts power that's hungry." He fixed Demon with a glare that could strip paint. "The suffering you've inflicted on her, that trauma, it's awakening what should have stayed sleeping. And when she returns..." "She's not returning," Morgana interrupted smoothly, inspecting her reflection in a silver compact. "No one survives the Forsaken Lands." "Problem solved." "Problem compounded, you mean?" Kaya snapped. "The moon goddess doesn't forgive the murder of true mates and their innocent offspring. The curse has already begun. Warriors losing their wolves is just the opening act. Next comes the madness, then the territory-wide loss of shifting ability, then..." She paused dramatically. "Then the Alpha himself begins to die. Slowly, painfully, as if his very soul is being torn apart piece by piece." Demon's chest constricted. That hollow ache that had been growing, it suddenly made terrible sense. "How long? Until you're dead?" Kaya shrugged. "Depends on how strong you are. Could be months. Could be weeks. The curse is tied to your mate's fate. If she dies, you die, slowly, agonizingly. If she lives and thrives, well, then things get interesting. This is ridiculous, Morgana said, but her voice had lost its confidence. These are just old wives' tales. Then explain Jackson, Riker interjected. Explain the warriors, the crops, the temple. Explain why the Alpha King looks like death warmed over and can't sleep without seeing her face. Demon's jaw clenched. The sleeplessness was true. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Alara's emerald gaze, hollow and betrayed, heard her final words. The moon goddess sees all, Demon. Even you. There has to be a way to fix this, he said. A ritual, a sacrifice, something. There's one way, Caius said. Find her. Beg her forgiveness. Pray she's merciful enough to accept it. And spend the rest of your life making amends. She smiled, sharp and cold. Of course, that assumes she survived, and that she'd ever forgive you, neither of which seems particularly likely. She's been gone 48 hours, Elder Thorne added. The Forsaken Lands are filled with rogue packs, wild magic, and creatures that make nightmares look friendly. The record survival time is 72 hours, and that was a trained warrior, not a pregnant Omega. Demon felt something crack inside his chest. Not the mate bond, which was already shattered, but something deeper. Pride, maybe, or denial. I'm sending a search party. Why? Morgana's voice was poisonous honey. So you could drag back a corpse? Face it, Demon, she's gone. Focus on breaking the curse another way. There is no other way, Caius said flatly. True mate bonds are absolute. You can't negotiate with cosmic law. Demon turned to Riker. Assemble a team. Our best trackers. We leave at dawn. You're going personally? Riker looked surprised, then calculating. That's either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, Demon admitted. But if there's even a chance she's alive, he couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't articulate the hope and terror warring in his gut. Morgana stood, smoothing her designer dress. This is absurd. You're risking more warriors on a suicide mission for a girl who's already dead. Think about your pack, Demon. Think about the kingdom. I am thinking about the kingdom, he said quietly. That's why I'm going to fix my mistake, even if it kills me. As the others filed out, Kaya lingered. You know what the real tragedy is? She said softly. Alara would have made you a better king. She would have softened your edges without weakening your strength. She would have taught you that love and power aren't enemies. She paused at the door. Now you'll learn that lesson anyway, but the tuition is going to cost you everything. Alone in the strategy room, Demon walked to the window overlooking the northern forests. Somewhere beyond those trees, beyond the territories and the borders, lay the Forsaken Lands. And somewhere in that hell, either dying or already dead, was the woman he'd betrayed. His wolf stirred weakly, the first movement it had made since the rejection. It howled one word, over and over, a lament that echoed in his bones. I know, Demon whispered to the darkness. I know, but knowing and fixing were two very different things. And as the first stars appeared in the twilight sky, Demon wondered if the moon goddess was watching, laughing, or simply waiting for the other shoe to drop. He didn't have to wait long. At midnight, another warrior fell. By dawn, it was 3 more. The curse was accelerating, and Demon's time was running OU. Into the Forsaken. The Forsaken Lands looked exactly like their name suggested, as if the moon goddess herself had taken one look at this particular stretch of wilderness and said, hard pass. Demon stood at the border marker, a weathered stone carved with warnings in the old tongue, and watched his search party try not to look terrified. 6 warriors, plus Riker and himself. All volunteers, which had surprised him until he remembered that half the pack blamed him for the curse, and the other half were too terrified to argue. These 6 were loyal to a fault, which meant they were either incredibly brave or desperately stupid. Remind me why we're doing this again? Asked Finn, the youngest of the group, barely 20 and too optimistic for his own good. His dark skin gleamed with nervous sweat despite the morning chill. Because our Alpha King made a catastrophically bad decision, and now we're all going to die fixing it, said Tessa, a scarred veteran who'd fought in the border wars. Her blunt honesty was both refreshing and exhausting. Any other questions? Yeah, said Corin, checking his weapons belt for the third time. What happens if we actually find her and she's, properly pissed off? Then we die slightly differently than if we don't find her, Riker said cheerfully. Probably more creatively. Now stop stalling and move out. The Forsaken Lands swallow them whole. Within an hour, Demon understood why no one survived here. The forest itself felt wrong. Trees grew at angles that defied physics, their bark moving like breathing flesh. The air tasted of copper and ozone. And the sounds. God, the sounds. Whispers in languages he didn't recognize, laughter that came from no visible source, howls that definitely weren't from any wolf pack he knew. Stay together, he ordered, though his own wolf was cowering like a pup in a thunderstorm. And whatever you do, don't what? Finn asked. I was hoping someone else would finish that sentence, Demon admitted. I've never actually been here. Oh, that's comforting, Tessa muttered. Following a leader who doesn't know where he's going in a magical helllands. This'll end well. They've been tracking for 3 hours when they found the first body. Or rather, what remained of it. The rogue had been torn apart by something with very large claws and very little mercy. The corpse was positioned against a tree, almost deliberately displayed, and carved into the bark above, it was a message in fresh blood. Asterisk turned back. She is ours now. Asterisk. Well, that's not ominous at all, Corin said weakly. Demon's heart hammered against his ribs. She's alive. What do you figure? Riker asked, studying the message. Could just be rogues being dramatic. The blood's fresh. Hours old at most. And they wrote, she is ours now, present tense. They wouldn't bother threatening us if she was dead. It was thin logic, straws he was desperately grasping at, but Demon clung to it anyway. They pressed deeper. The forest grew darker, denser, until they were navigating by moonlight that filtered through the canopy in silver threads. Demon's instinct screamed that they were being watched, stalked, herded like prey towards something waiting with open jaws. That something revealed itself at sunset. The rogue pack materialized from the shadows. 12 wolves, all massive, all feral, with eyes that glowed red in the dying light. Their alpha, a grizzled beast with a torn ear and more scars than fur, stepped forward with a grin that showed too many teeth. Well, the rogue alpha said, his voice gravel scraped over broken glass. The mighty Alpha King, slumming in our territory. Heard you lost something precious. Or should I say, threw something precious away. Demon shifted to his wolf form in one fluid motion, and his pack followed suit. Even diminished by the curse, he was still larger than any of the rogues, his black fur crackling with residual alpha power. Where is she? The pretty little Omega. The rogue laughed, but there was something in his eyes, fear, maybe, or respect. Oh, you're in for a surprise, King. See, we found her 3 days ago. Pregnant, terrified, absolutely delicious looking. We figured we'd have some fun before the kill. Red filled Demon's vision. His wolf surged forward, but Riker crashed into his side, forcing him back. Figured, Riker emphasized the past tense. What stopped you? The rogue's grin faded completely. She did. The goddess's price. The rogue alpha's fear was palpable, rolling off him in waves that even Demon's weakened senses could detect. A creature that bathed in violence, afraid. That alone should have been impossible. What do you mean she did? Demon growled, fighting every instinct that screamed at him to tear this monster apart for even thinking about touching Alara. We had her cornered, the rogue said, and his voice actually trembled. 5 of us. She was exhausted, bleeding, pregnant, easy prey. My beta, Cade, he grabbed her first, laughing, telling her all the things we were going to do. He paused, swallowing hard. Then the moon came out, full and bright but wrong. Too bright, and she started glowing. Glowing, Tessa interjected skeptically. Silver light, pure power, the kind that burns when you get too close. The rogue's eyes went distant, haunted. Kay didn't let go fast enough. She looked at him, just looked, and he screamed. Started burning from the inside out, silver fire coming through his eyes, his mouth. 10 seconds later, he was ash. Just ash. The clearing fell silent except for the whisper of wind through twisted trees. "You're lying," Demon said, but there was no conviction in his voice. Deep in his chest, where the shattered mate bond festered, something stirred. Recognition, maybe, or warning. "Check the clearing 2 miles north," the rogue said. "See the ash. See the scorched earth in a perfect circle. See the trees that won't grow within 50 feet of that spot." He backed away, his pack following. She looked at the rest of us after Cade burned. Her eyes weren't green anymore. They were silver. Moon silver. And she said, "Tell him I'm coming. Tell him the moon goddess keeps her promises." "Where is she now?" Riker demanded. The rogue pointed north with his muzzle. "Follow the silver light. Shines every night now, like a beacon. Or target." He locked eyes with Demon. "Fair warning, King. What's out there isn't your mate anymore. That's something ancient. Something that remembers when wolves were gods, not animals playing at politics. Smart money says you run. But you won't, will you?" "No," Demon said simply. "Didn't think so. Good luck dying." The rogues melted into the shadows, leaving Demon's pack alone with implications that felt heavier than mountains. "So," Finn said eventually, nursing his ribs from where he'd hit the tree earlier, "is anyone else thinking those rogues maybe had a point about leaving?" "Shut up, Finn," Tessa said, but she looked uncertain. Demon shifted back to human form. "North. We go north." "Demon," Riker said carefully, using his actual name instead of his title. "A bad sign. If what he said is true, if Alera's bloodline has awakened, we might not be walking toward a rescue. We might be walking toward an execution." "Then I'll face it," Demon said. "I put her there. Whatever she's become, whatever she does to me, I deserve every second of it." "Very noble," Riker muttered. "Stupid but noble." They moved north through forests that grew increasingly disturbed. Trees here were scorched and twisted, their bark bearing patterns that looked almost like writing in a language Demon couldn't read. The ground showed burn marks in perfect geometric shapes, circles, triangles, symbols that hurt to look at directly. And there, in the distance, silver light. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and strong, radiating from a clearing ahead. As they approached, Demon felt the curse in his chest respond. Not with pain, but with desperate recognition. His wolf whimpered, caught between terror and impossible hope. They reached the clearing's edge and stopped. In the center stood Alera. But not the Alera he remembered. This woman glowed with inner light, silver marks crawling up her dark skin like living tattoos. Her emerald eyes had become pools of molten silver. Her pregnant belly was pronounced now, his child visible beneath torn fabric. And her beautiful hair had turned white as moonlight, floating around her head as if underwater. She turned to face them, and Demon fell to his knees without conscious thought. "Hello, Demon," she said, and her voice echoed with harmonics that didn't belong in a single throat. "I've been waiting for you." Lessons in survival. "Alera," Demon whispered, the name catching in his throat like broken glass. "That name," she said, each word carrying the weight of divine judgment, "belongs to a woman who died in these woods. A woman who begged monsters for mercy. A woman whose mate threw her away like garbage." She tilted her head, studying him with those alien silver eyes. "What you see before you is what remains. What survived? What evolved?" "I'm sorry," Demon said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. "I'm so sorry." Alera laughed, and the sound shattered 3 nearby trees. Birds that had been roosting exploded into flight, screaming. "Sorry. He's sorry." She looked at the moon, at something Demon couldn't see. "Did you hear that, Mother? He's sorry. Should I forgive him? Should I let him off the hook for attempted murder of his mate and child?" The moon pulsed brighter, as if responding. "No." Alera's smile wasn't kind. "I didn't think so either." She raised her hand, and Demon's world exploded into agony. Pain was an inadequate word for what coursed through his body. It felt like every nerve ending had been replaced with molten silver, his wolf howling as the curse erupted from simmer to full boil. He collapsed, back arching, unable to scream because his lungs had forgotten how to function. Through the white-hot torture, he heard his pack shouting, Riker yelling something about standing down, and Finn, brave, stupid Finn, shifting and lunging at Alara. She didn't even look at him, just flicked her wrist. Finn went flying backward, slamming into an oak hard enough to crack the trunk. He slumped unconscious, but breathing. The message was clear. She could kill them all without breaking a sweat, but she was choosing mercy. For now. Anyone else want to try? Alara asked, her gaze sweeping over the remaining wolves. They all backed down, even Tessa, who'd never backed down from anything. Good. Smart. Your alpha made his choice. Now he lives with the consequences. The pain receded enough for Demon to gasp air. Please, he managed. Not them. This is between us. Oh, now you care about collateral damage? Alara's laugh was bitter as winter frost. Where was that concern when you banished me? When you condemned your own child to be torn apart by rogues? When you stood before your pack and called me unworthy? She knelt beside him, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her transformed body. I beg you, Demon. On my knees, in front of everyone, I begged. Do you remember what you said? He did. God help him, he did. I said you weren't worthy. You said I wasn't worthy, she repeated, each word a lash across his soul. You said my child was a bastard. You said the rogues would grant me more mercy than I deserved. She leaned closer, and beneath the rage in those silver eyes, he saw galaxies of hurt. Do you know what they try to do to me? Do you want the details? Because I remember every second, every hand, every laugh, every moment I thought my baby and I would die, because the man who was supposed to protect us decided his pride mattered more. Demon's eyes burned with tears he didn't deserve to shed. I can't undo it. I can't take it back. If I could. But you can't, Alara interrupted, standing. That's the beautiful thing about consequences. They're permanent. Like scars. Like trauma. Like the moment when the moon goddess appeared and asked if I wanted revenge or justice. She walked back toward the clearing's center where the silver light pulsed strongest. Demon forced himself to his feet, waving off his pack's attempts to help. She gave me a choice, Alara continued. Let me die and curse you to follow, slow and painful. Or save me, awaken my bloodline, and let me decide your fate. She turned back. I chose option 3. I chose to see if you'd come for me. If you'd risk everything to find me. I'm here, Demon said hoarsely. You came on day 3, Alara corrected. 3 days, Demon. I gave you 30, and you couldn't last 3. She smiled sadly. Question is, did you come because you love me? Or because you need me to break your curse? 30 days of hell. It was a death sentence. Everyone knew it. The rogues had said 3 days was the record for survival. 30 was impossible. But Demon looked at his pack, at Riker's resigned acceptance, at Tessa's grim nod, at Finn who was regaining consciousness and groaning about broken ribs. He looked at Alara, at the life growing in her belly, at the woman who'd been gentle and kind before he'd broken her into something harder, sharper, necessary. I accept, he said. Of course you do, Alara said. You don't have a choice. She waved her hand and Demon's pack vanished, transported, he assumed, back to the border, back to safety, leaving him alone with his mate-turned-avenging angel in the heart of the Forsaken Lands. 30 days starts now, Alara said, turning away. Try not to die in the first week. That'd be anticlimactic. Wait, Demon called. Where will you be? She paused, looking back over her shoulder, and for a moment, just a moment, he saw the old Alara beneath the transformation. Softer, sadder, watching, waiting, hoping you prove me wrong about giving up on you. She touched her belly, and preparing to be a single mother, just in case. Then she dissolved into silver light and moonbeams, leaving Demon alone in the clearing as the first howls of rogues echoed through the darkness. Day 1 of 30. This was going to hurt. By day 7, Demon had learned several important lessons about the Forsaken Lands. 1. The rogues hunted in coordinated packs because they were smarter than he'd given them credit for. 2. The wild magic wasn't metaphorical. Actual magic that made trees walk and rocks speak permeated every cursed inch. 3. Hunger was a special kind of torture when you were too busy not dying to hunt properly. And 4. Alara was definitely watching him suffer, because every time he was about to die, something convenient would happen. A rogue would trip over nothing. A tree branch would fall at precisely the right angle to block a killing blow. Once, an entire rock face had collapsed on his attackers, leaving him miraculously unscathed in a pocket of safety. It would have been touching if it wasn't so humiliating. "Are you having fun?" he shouted at the sky on day 8, after another coincidental save involving a sudden fog bank. "Because this is definitely what growth looks like, running for my life while you play guardian angel." The only response was distant laughter. Or wind. With the Forsaken Lands, it was impossible to tell. On day 12, delirious from hunger and exhaustion, Demon collapsed by a stream. He'd been trying to catch fish with his bare hands, a skill he'd never needed to learn as an alpha king with servants, and failing spectacularly. His reflection in the water showed a stranger, gaunt, wild-eyed, beard growing in patches, clothes torn to ribbons. "Look at you," he muttered to his reflection. "The mighty Alpha King, reduced to this. Father would be so proud." "Your father," a voice said from behind him, "was an arrogant fool who died alone because he pushed everyone away. You're well on your way to matching his legacy." Demon spun, nearly falling into the water. An old man sat on a rock, ancient and weathered, with eyes that held too much knowing. He hadn't been there a moment ago. "Who?" "Silas," the old man said. "Someone who used to be someone. Now just a hermit who lives where no one looks. Which means I see things. Like spoiled Alpha Kings learning hard lessons." He held out a cooked fish. "Eat. You look pathetic." Demon's pride warred with his hunger. Hunger won. He grabbed the fish and devoured it, barely tasting it. "The moon goddess sent you here to suffer," Silas said, catching another fish with practiced ease. "But suffering without learning is just masochism. So tell me, King, what have you learned so far?" Demon wanted to snap at him, to assert authority, but the words died. Because the answer was both everything and nothing. "I learned I'm not as strong as I thought," he finally admitted. "Alone, I'm just average. Maybe less." "Good start," Silas said. "What else?" "Transformation. I learned that the things I valued, power, status, bloodlines, none of that matters when you're starving in the dark," Demon continued, his voice raw with exhaustion. "The rogues don't care that I'm an Alpha King. The forest doesn't bend to my will. I'm just another animal trying not to die." "Better," Silas acknowledged, gutting another fish. And I learned that Alara was stronger than I ever gave her credit for." The admission hurt like swallowing glass. She survived here. Pregnant, alone, betrayed. She survived what's killing me, even with all my training and strength. And not just survived. She transformed into something the rogues fear. He looked at the old man. "I don't know if I can earn her forgiveness, but I'm starting to understand why I don't deserve it." Silas smiled, his weathered face crinkling. "Now that's actual growth. Day 15 is when the lands decide if you're worth keeping alive. It's when survival shifts from physical to spiritual. When you face not just external threats, but internal ones." He stood, brushing off his worn pants. "The goddess doesn't just want you to survive, King. She wants you transformed. And transformation requires destroying what you were to build what you could be." The old man vanished as mysteriously as he'd appeared, leaving Demon with more questions than answers. Day 15 arrived with a vengeance. Demon woke to find himself surrounded by mist so thick he couldn't see his own hands. But in the mist he saw things, memories, regrets, moments he'd tried to forget. There was Alara serving drinks at his banquet. The moment the mate bond had snapped into place, and he'd felt nothing but disgust at the cosmic joke. There was their first night together when she'd trusted him with her trauma, her dreams, her ridiculous fear of butterflies. And there was the blood moon. His rejection, her empty eyes. "You need to see it," Alara's voice echoed through the mist, though she wasn't physically present. "You need to understand what you destroyed before you can build anything new." The visions continued, relentless. He saw Alara in the Forsaken Lands, running from rogues while cradling her pregnant belly. Saw her cornered, terrified, begging the moon goddess for mercy not for herself, but for their child. Saw the moment the transformation began, the agony, the power, the death of who she'd been, and the birth of who she'd become. "I'm sorry," Demon screamed into the mist. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." "Sorry isn't enough," Ilara's voice said. "But it's a start." The mist cleared on day 16, and Demon found himself changed. Not physically, he was still gaunt, still exhausted, still barely surviving. But something internal had shifted. The arrogance that had driven every decision, the pride that had valued perception over truth, the fear that had made him choose status over love. It was cracking, breaking, making room for something new. The remaining days blurred together. Demon stopped fighting the Forsaken Lands and started learning from them. He tracked not just to hunt, but to understand. He listened not just to survive, but to hear. He watched the rogues and realized they weren't mindless monsters. They were wolves who'd been rejected by society, forced to survive in impossible conditions, not unlike Ilara herself. On day 28, he encountered the rogue Alpha again. But instead of fighting, Demon shifted to human form and said, "Thank you." The rogue blinked, confused. "For what?" "For showing me mercy when you told me about Ilara. You could have lied, could have said she was dead. But you told me the truth, even though it terrified you." Demon nodded respectfully. That took courage. The rogue studied him for a long moment. "You've changed, King. Might survive this yet." Then he melted back into shadows, leaving Demon alone with 2 days left. Day 30 arrived with dawn. Demon stood in the original clearing where Ilara had condemned him, battered but alive, transformed but still himself. The silver light pulsed once, twice, and then she appeared. Human, not goddess. Ilara, not the moon's vengeance. She walked toward him slowly, studying him with eyes that had returned to emerald green. Those silver flecks remained as permanent reminders. "You survived," she said softly. "I did," Demon replied. "But more importantly, I learned." "Tell me." "I learned that a king without compassion is a tyrant. That power without love is emptiness. That I was so afraid of appearing weak that I became the weakest version of myself. A coward who hurt the one person brave enough to love me anyway." He stepped closer, but didn't touch her. "I learned that you are the strongest person I've ever known, and that our child deserves better than the father I was. So I'm going to spend the rest of my life becoming the father, the mate they deserve." Ilara's eyes filled with tears. "The curse is broken," she whispered. "The moment you truly understood, it shattered. The pack is healing. The lands are recovering." She placed his hand on her pregnant belly, and he felt their child kick, strong, alive, perfect. But understanding isn't the same as forgiveness. "That will take time." "I have time," Demon said. "All the time you need. I'll earn it, Ilara. Every single day." She smiled then, tentative but real. "Then let's go home, Demon. Let's see if an Alpha King who learned compassion can actually lead with wisdom." As they walked from the Forsaken Lands together, changed, scarred, but healing, the moon goddess watched from above and smiled. Sometimes the best revenge was giving someone a chance to become better. And sometimes, just sometimes, they actually took it. The return. The border of the Forsaken Lands looked different from this side. Less ominous, more like a threshold between what was and what could be. Demon walked beside Ilara in silence, hyper-aware of every detail. The way she favored her left side when the baby kicked, the silver streaks that remained in her now black hair, the careful distance she maintained between them. Not hostile, but not trusting either. Earned, he reminded himself. Trust was earned. Rika was waiting at the border stone, along with half the pack it seemed. When they saw Demon emerge from the trees, alive, transformed, humbled, a collective exhale rippled through the crowd. But their eyes weren't on him. They were on Ilara, on the woman who'd survived what should have killed her, who glowed with residual power even in human form. "Alpha King," Rika said formally. Then his professionalism cracked and he grabbed Demon in a bone-crushing hug. "You absolute idiot. I thought you were dead." "Almost was. Multiple times." Demon returned the embrace, then stepped back. "But I'm not your Alpha King anymore. Not yet. Not until I prove I deserve the title." Confusion rippled through the pack. Alphas didn't abdicate, didn't question their own authority. It simply wasn't done. What are you saying? Riker asked carefully. I'm saying I was a terrible king. I made decisions based on pride instead of wisdom, on fear instead of courage. I nearly destroyed us all because I couldn't admit that an Omega knew more about strength than I did. Demon's voice carried across the assembled wolves. So here's what's going to happen. Riker, you're acting alpha until I've proven I can lead with actual wisdom. Elara, he turned to her. If you'll accept it, you're Luna. Not because you're my mate, but because this pack needs someone who understands that power is nothing without compassion. Lady Morgana, standing in the crowd, made a sound of outrage. You can't give an Omega a position of authority. It's against tradition. Tradition, Elara said quietly, but her voice carried like thunder, nearly killed this pack. Tradition told Demon to reject his true mate. Tradition valued bloodlines over bonds. Maybe it's time for new traditions. She met Morgana's gaze, and silver flickered in her emerald eyes. Or would you like to challenge me for the position? Morgana paled and looked away. Smart woman. Elder Thorn stepped forward, leaning on his gnarled walking stick. The Moon Temple has declared the curse broken. Warriors are regaining their wolves. Crops are recovering. The goddess is satisfied. He fixed Demon with a penetrating stare. But satisfaction isn't forgiveness. Boy, you've got a long road ahead. I know, Demon said, and I'm ready to walk it. The pack dispersed slowly, whispers following Demon and Elara as they made their way toward the palace. Some whispers were hopeful, others skeptical. All were uncertain about this new dynamic where an Alpha admitted fault and an Omega wielded power. In the palace, Elara was given the Luna's quarters, separate from Demon's, at her request. He didn't argue, didn't push, just helped carry her meager belongings and left her in peace. Demon, she called as he reached the door. He turned, hopeful. Thank you, she said, for not dying, for learning, she touched her belly, for giving our child a chance to know their father. It's the least I could do, he said. And Elara, I know I don't have a right to ask, but may I attend the healer's appointments? For the baby. She studied him for a long moment. You may, but you're there as the father, not as the Alpha King. No authority, no commands. Just support. I can do that, Demon said, and meant it. Over the following weeks, the Northern Territories transformed. Demon worked not from the throne but from the training grounds, the fields, the places where ordinary wolves lived. He listened more than he spoke. He asked for advice instead of giving orders. He learned the names of pack members he'd never bothered to notice before. And slowly, painfully slowly, he saw Elara soften. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something like hope. One evening, 6 weeks after their return, Demon found Elara in the palace gardens, talking to their unborn child. He hung back, not wanting to intrude, until she gestured for him to join her. The baby kicked when they heard your voice, she said softly. I think they recognize you. Demon knelt beside her, tentatively placing his hand on her belly. The baby kicked again, strong and insistent, and something in his chest, something that had been hollow since the rejection, filled with warmth. Hello, little one, he whispered. I'm your father, and I promise, I swear on everything I am, that I'll never let pride come between us, that I'll protect you and your mother with everything I have, that I'll be better. Elara's hand covered his, and for the first time since the blood moon, the mate bond flickered. Not restored, but not completely dead either. A ember, waiting to be rekindled. Better is good, she said. Better is a start. And in the garden, under the watchful eye of the moon goddess, a broken bond began, slowly, carefully, to heal. New beginnings. 3 months after their return, the Northern Territories were unrecognizable. Not in landscape, the forests were still forests, the mountains still mountains, but in spirit. The rigid hierarchy that had defined pack life for generations was softening, bending, evolving into something more flexible and, surprisingly, stronger. It started small. Demon implemented a council system where wolves of all ranks could voice concerns directly to leadership. Ilara established healing centers in the outer territories, bringing medical care to communities that had been neglected for decades. Rika, as acting alpha, proved to be a brilliant administrator, handling the day-to-day governance while Demon focused on rebuilding trust. But the real changes were personal. Demon woke before dawn each day, not to train as he once had, but to prepare breakfast. He'd learned to cook during his time in the Forsaken Lands, badly at first, progressively better, and now he left a tray outside Ilara's door every morning. Fresh fruit, warm bread, tea brewed exactly how she liked it. He never knocked, never expected thanks, just left it and walked away. For the first 2 weeks, the trays remained untouched, a silent rejection that hurt more than any physical wound. Then, one morning, he found the empty tray with a note. The tea was perfect. Thank you. It was the smallest victory, but it felt like everything. The healer's appointments became sacred time. Demon attended every one, sitting quietly in the corner while the head healer, a stained woman named Dr. Vance, examined Ilara and their growing child. He asked questions, intelligent ones that showed he'd been reading every book on pregnancy he could find. He took notes. He never once pulled rank or acted like his presence was mandatory rather than privileged. Your mate is insufferably earnest, Dr. Vance told Ilara during one appointment, while Demon was out of earshot. It's actually quite annoying how hard he's trying. Ilara laughed, her first real laugh in months. He is, isn't he? The question is, Dr. Vance said more seriously, is it working? Is he actually changing? Or is this an elaborate performance? Ilara touched her belly, feeling their daughter kick. They'd learned the gender last week, and Demon had cried, actually cried, when Dr. Vance announced it. I think, Ilara said slowly, that he's genuinely trying. Whether that's enough, she trailed off, uncertain. The pack noticed the changes too. Demon, who'd once ruled from an ivory tower of privilege, now spent his days working alongside ordinary wolves. He helped rebuild homes damaged during the chaos. He trained young warriors, teaching them not just combat but honor, restraint, wisdom. He sat with grieving families, offering not platitude but genuine presence. One afternoon, he found himself helping old Mrs. Chen carry groceries to her cottage on the territory's edge. She was Omega-born, elderly, someone the old demon would never have noticed. You've changed, Alpha King, she said as he set down her bags. Time was, you wouldn't have looked twice at someone like me. I was a fool, Mrs. Chen, Demon said honestly. I'm trying to be less of one. She patted his hand with her gnarled fingers. That girl of yours, your mate, she's good for you. Good for all of us. Don't lose her again. I won't, Demon promised. Not ever again. But promises were cheap. Actions mattered. The breakthrough came on a rainy evening 4 months into Ilara's pregnancy. She'd been walking in the garden, her favorite place for thinking, when she slipped on wet stone. Demon, who'd been giving her space but watching from a distance like a worried shadow, caught her before she fell. For a moment, they were frozen. His arms around her, her hands clutching his shirt, both breathing hard from the scare. The mate bond, that ember that had been slowly warming, suddenly flared. I've got you, Demon whispered. I'll always catch you. I swear it. Ilara looked up at him, really looked, and saw not the arrogant king who'd rejected her, but a man genuinely transformed by suffering. Humbled, wiser, better. I know, she said softly, and then, in words that felt like benediction, I believe you. That night, for the first time since the rejection, Ilara invited Demon to stay for dinner in her quarters. They ate slowly, talking about everything and nothing, the baby's movements, pack politics, her fear of butterflies that still made him smile. No grand declarations, no dramatic reconciliations, just two people, once broken, learning to be whole together. I'm not ready to forgive completely, Ilara admitted as the evening wound down. The hurt is still there, the betrayal, the trauma of what happened in the Forsaken Lands. I understand, Demon said. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. But, Ilara continued, her hand finding his across the table, I'm ready to try. To see if we can build something new from the ashes of what we lost. Demon's fingers intertwined with hairs, and the mate bond sang, quiet, tentative, but undeniably alive. "New sounds perfect," he said, and somewhere above, the moon goddess smiled, satisfied that her lesson had finally taken root. Full circle. 6 months later, under a full moon that bathed the Northern Territories in silver light, lunar Elara gave birth to a daughter. The labor was long and difficult, but when the baby's first cry echoed through the birthing room, every wolf in the territory felt it, a pulse of pure power that signaled the arrival of something extraordinary. "She's perfect," Demon whispered, cradling his daughter for the first time. The baby had Elara's dark skin and his silver-blue eyes, with a small crescent-shaped birthmark on her shoulder, the moon goddess's blessing made visible. "Her name is Selene," Elara said, exhausted but radiant. "For new beginnings." The pack celebrated for 3 days. Wolves who'd once questioned an Omega Luna now bowed before her with genuine respect. Demon, who'd reclaimed his title as Alpha King after proving his transformation wasn't performance but permanent change, ruled not with iron authority, but with a wisdom hard-won through suffering. Lady Morgana had left the territory months ago, unable to stomach a world where Omegas held power and Alphas admitted mistakes. "Good riddance," most agreed. On Selene's naming ceremony, Demon stood before the assembled pack with his mate beside him and his daughter in his arms. "This child represents everything I almost destroyed through pride," he said. "She's living proof that strength and compassion aren't enemies, they are partners. And she'll grow up in a pack that values both." That night, in their shared quarters, Elara had finally moved in 3 months prior. Demon held his family close. "Thank you," he whispered to Elara, "for surviving, for giving me a chance I didn't deserve, for teaching me what real strength looks like." Elara kissed him softly. "Thank you for learning, for changing, for becoming the man I always knew you could be." Above them, the moon shone bright, and the Northern Territories, once cursed, now blessed, thrived under a king who'd learned that love wasn't weakness. It was the only strength that mattered.